A tragedy that rocked the nation, but also helped to sink a government that led many Koreans to question their political leaders. Today we're talking about the Sewol Ferry disaster. Disasters are often a moment of both mourning and national self-reflection, and they are also catalysts for changes in legislation. The 1987 Herald of Free Enterprises sinking resulted in major reforms of cargo-holding ferries. The 1912 sinking of the Titanic disaster is another event that has captured the imagination of writers, filmmakers, and adventurers for generations. More than other types of catastrophe, great symbolic value in the mind of the public, especially in the view of the isolation and vulnerability of humans pitted against the fearsome might of the oceans. Ferry disaster of April 16, 2014 is one such incident. The sinking of the ferry, the manner in which the emergency evacuation procedures were handled, or rather mishandled, the attempted salvage operation, the official and local and national response to the disaster have been a source of anger amongst the victim/survivors, the relatives of the deceased, and the South Korean public just in general. Despite the number of years that have elapsed since the tragedy, key questions about the sinking remain unanswered, and public anger shows little signs of dissipation. The fallout from the disaster continues into the present. In a society and culture that has been traditionally governed according to strict hierarchical practices, many ordinary Koreans have begun to question their acceptance of authority and expertise. The tragedy occurred while the Sewol was making a routine trip between the city of Incheon, close to the capital, and Jeju Island, a popular holiday destination situated in the East China Sea between Japan and the southeastern coast of Korea. In addition to the goods and vehicles being transported, on board were 476 passengers, 325 of whom were high school students from Ansan on a trip to the island. This wasn't just an ordinary vacation for the students, it was a school trip. 304 passengers lost their lives, and most of them were the young school students. What was meant to be a joyous journey turned into a nightmare for those on board and those friends and family left behind. The cause of the accident has never been fully determined despite the investigations into the sinking. The particular stretch of water that the vessel was navigating is pretty well known for its perilous currents. However, the navigator who was steering the ship at the time of the incident had experience negotiating the route. A sudden and inexplicable change of the course had caused the ship to list heavy to one side. Later investigations showed serious structural flaws in the ship's design, which had been carried out by the ship's owners without official approval. Cargo had not been securely lashed, and exasperating the list of the ship. As the vessel began to take on water, its fate was sealed. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the disaster was the response of the authorities. Many of the victims perished while sitting in their cabins waiting for instructions about what to do. After the ship began to list, the captain ordered an announcement to be broadcasted instructing passengers not to evacuate the ship, but to stay put. The order was not rescinded, even while the captain and his crew were abandoning the ship just 50 minutes later. There was an hour when passengers could have been taken to the lifeboats. With the Confucian cultural context in which seniors have rigidly defined duties of pastoral care to people under their wing, the captain's dereliction of duty was taken particularly badly. This caused him to be sentenced to life imprisonment. However, the failings did not end with the captain. They went to the very top of government. Many of the helicopters dispatched by authorities were not equipped to evacuate passengers, but instead filmed the stranded ship so the authorities could decide what action to take. The Coast Guard's response was severely criticized, and most of those saved were rescued by fishermen responding to the distress calls. The right-wing President Park, daughter of the dictator Park Chung-hee, seemed unaware of the seriousness of the crisis unfolding, and witness reports suggest she remained confined to her bedroom during the crisis. Offers for help from the Japanese Coast Guard and the U.S. Naval Forces were refused, while the Korean Coast Guard's response foundered. Realizing they had failed to act decisively during the country's worst disaster in a whole generation, Park's government then went on a drive to shore up its fragile public support. With no hope of finding survivors, they ordered rescue teams to pump air into the hull of the vessel to quote-unquote save survivors they claimed were trapped in air pockets. However, rescue teams used air pumps that contained lethal diesel fumes that would have killed anyone trapped inside of the hull. The political fallout was enormous. The sinking galvanized an opposition movement to Park. The victims' families began a non-stop demonstration in central Seoul, demanding answers to the causes of the sinking. Many Koreans began to argue that Park's response to the disaster proved her role to be inept and corrupt. These charges were confirmed when Park was impeached and then removed from the office after the Chosun-style corruption scandal in March 2017. Park's popularity never recovered after her botched handling of the disaster. But however, it also appears that the cause of the Sewol victims had been used as a political football by Park Geun-hye's opponents in order to facilitate her removal from power. Victims' families still argue that Park's successor, Moon Jae-in, deliberately covered up the full story of the ferry sinking to protect those who failed to rescue the victims. The mass demonstrations that followed in the wake of the Sewol disaster also provide evidence of the deep political rifts within South Korean society. However, the implications of the Sewol tragedy go far beyond politics. For many Koreans, both young and old, the affair raises questions about trust and authority in the hierarchical nations that are frequently used to both justify social, political, and cultural institutions that historically regulate Korea and Koreans. Essentially saying young people had died because they had followed the orders of older Koreans in a position of authority. When the captain escaped, you guys, he escaped in passenger clothing and civilian clothing so he wouldn't get recognized as the captain and sent back to the ship. A lot of the students who were on board were so excited when they were in a sinking ship and seeing rescue boats start to approach. They started throwing themselves against the window, trying to bust the window to get to the rescuers, thinking that they were there to save them. But the rescuers just continued to tap on the windows and keep passing by them, knowing we're not here to save them, we're just here to put on a show. So imagine being a student, seeing you're on a sinking ship, your rescue boat is right in front of you, and the most they do is tap on the glass back and keep passing by. Using cameras that were in the cars on the cargo ship, it shows what actually happened. Now, when they made that major turn to the left, all of the cars had shifted with that, which breached the side of the ship. When the students realized they're probably not going to get off this ship alive, they started texting their families saying, "Look, if I've ever wronged you, please forgive me." Others were texting their mothers saying, "Look, I love you. Tell my little sister I love them." Parents who were gathered on the shore waiting for rescue boats to bring back their children never came with their children. They began to run into the ocean in attempts to help save the kids. A male teacher who was actually on board the ship with the students texted his wife in a last effort to tell her that he loved her, stating that he can't talk, he has to save the kids. He saved a few of the children himself, but ended up perishing, and they discovered his body later in the water. There are a lot of tragic details that go into this case, you guys. I'm going to be playing you guys what some of the parents have said, some of the clips that the students actually took on board, and I'm going to be sharing footage of the actual 911 call, or in their country it is 119, the actual call a student placed because nobody was saving them. These clips can be very disturbing to some viewers, so viewer discretion is advised.
잠깐만요. 자, 지금 타고 오신 배가 침몰한다는 소리 아니면 옆에 있는 다른 배가 침몰한다는 소리? 배가 침몰한다고요. 위치 말해주세요. 위치 배가 어디 있습니까? 위치를 잘 모르겠어요. 지금 여기가. 위치를 모른다고요? 거기 GPS 경위도 안 나오나요? 검도하고 위도? 배 이름이 뭡니까? 배 이름? 세월호요. 세월호. 현재 계실 위치에서 움직이지 마시고 주변에 잡을 수 있는 공이나 잡고 대기해 주시기 바랍니다. 야, 미쳤나봐.
주는 거야. 영화가 다 그러잖아. 그 지하철도 그렇잖아. 안전하니까 좀만 잊어달라고 했는데 지하철 무서운데 주는
우리 진짜로 이만큼 귀여운 거야. 진짜야.
다른 사람들은 살고.
수고했다, 세월호. 세월호 이태원이라고 있는데, 그, 세월호는 어떻습니까? 세월호는 지금, 뭐, 거의 움직임이 몰라가 있습니다. 어떻게 해야 될까요? 지금 바에 어디냐고 모르겠네. 지금, 사람들은 아이스부 작게 짓고 대기하라 했는데, 사람들 그 브릿지에 모여가지고 지금, 거동이 움직일 수가 없는 상태입니다. 감사합니다. 서울시청 김상주입니다.
네, 수고하셨습니다. 서울의 이걸 상황인데요.
예.
인도에서 그 열차 전환 신고 들었습니까?
예. 지금 저희 지금 좀 상황 파악 중입니다, 지금.
심각한 상황인가요?
지금 현재 시간한지 좀 배하고 통화 중인데요. 지금 일단 배가 좀 기울어서 침수 중이고,
네.
아직 침몰은 안 됐고요.
어디 카메라 나오는 건 없죠?
네, 아직 없습니다, 예.
야 여기 만약에 나 진짜 죽은 거 아니야? 상황이 아니야 이거 진짜라고. 야 누구 고향 저기 지금 뭘 거야? 아뭘 꺼내? 됐어. 우리 뒤지기 싫다고. 아니 뒤져도 별사실 우리 들어오긴 하나요? 와 기울 줄은 상상도 못했다. 맥주에 가고 있어. 안 가는 걱정하는 거. 근데 갑자기 그렇게 거야? 이상한 냄새나. 야, 나 받아줄 수 있냐? 아니, 떨어지지 말라니까. 나 진짜 내려가고 싶어. 난 내려가지 않는 걸 추천할게. 나 되게 싫어. 야, 물 들어오면 존나 재밌겠다. 아, 진짜 물 들어오면 진짜 우리 나가야 돼. 엄마한테 전화해볼까? 엄마, 나 마지막 있으니. 야, 구명조끼! 절규. 없어, 여기 이제. 어떤 데서 나가는 거야, 진짜 신모래요? 와, 구명조끼 던지래. 야, 구명조끼 입어, 너도. 야, 구명조끼. 너 어떡하냐? 나도 지퍼 고장났어. 여기 구명조끼 한 개 없어요. 밖에 입었어?
밖에 애들 안 입었는데? 밖에 애들 안 입었어.
야 근데 지금 밖에 상황 내란다 나와야 되는 상황을 몰라. 아니 왜 선장은 뭐 하길래 야 이거 뉴스 뜬다. 야 내가 항상 배포한다. 이거 뉴스 뜬다. 아니야 이걸 안 하면 지금 침몰하는데. 엄마 사랑해요. 아빠 사랑해요. 두자 사랑해요. 이제 뭔 상황인지 모르겠어. 구명조끼 입으라는 건 찜어대고 있다는 소리 아니야?
Now I'm going to be playing you guys a survivor's story.
중학교 2학년 1반이었던 세월호 생존 학생 장혜진이라고 합니다. 우선 대학교는 졸업했고 취업 자리 찾다가 지금 쉬고 있는 중입니다. 응급구조과 전공했어요. 원래 꿈은 유치원 교사였는데 이번 사건 계기로 또 응급구조과에 관심을 갖게 되었고 또 제가 많은 사람들에게 도움을 많이 받았다고 생각하거든요. 그래서 그 도움을 또 돌려주고 싶기도 해서 응급구조과로 가야겠다는 생각을 했어요.
At the time, more than half of the 476 passengers on board the Sewol Ferry were students from Tanwon High School. Ejin was one of the 325 students excited to go on a school field trip to Jeju Island.
어쨌든 저희는 이렇게 인천항 가가지고 기다리고 있는데 갑자기 이제 출항을 못할 수도 있다는 소리를 들었어요. 저희가 봤을 당시에도 안개가 너무 많이 낀 거예요. 근데 우리는 그래도 한 번뿐이 수학여행인데 당연히 가면 좋겠지라는 생각을 했고 근데 그러다가 출항을 하는 거예요. 그 당시 막 이렇게 레크리에이션 같은 거 하면서 재밌게 놀고 있다가 그 다음날 이제 아침이 됐죠. 밥을 먹고 있는데, 네, 그때도 저희는 기울어져 있는 상태로 밥을 먹는 느낌을 들었어요. 우리끼리 국물 기울어 있다고. 근데 우리는 파도 때문에 그냥 그런가 보다 이런 생각을 했고, 그때까지도 그냥 웃고 막 그랬어요. 처음에 뭐 그렇게 심각한 일이라고 못 느꼈죠. 근데 저희가 속보로 기사가 뜬 거예요. 그래서 그때부터 좀 심각성 느끼면서 뭐 애들 막 부모님한테 전화하기도 하고 저도 전화하고, 그런 기억은 안 나는데 친구들 말로는 막 단원고 학생들 특히 가만히 있으라고 이런 말도 나왔었대요.
현재 보시는 거는 현재 지금은 배가 기울어졌습니다. 전 토할 것 같고요. 이게 뭔 상황인지 모르겠어. 구명조끼 입으라는 건 찜마대고 있다는 소리 아니야?
항상 그런 데 가면 말 잘 들으면 된다. 저희는 그 말을 잘 들었을 뿐이고, 이제 물이 더 차니까 더 어두워지잖아요. 창문으로 계속 저희가 가라앉는 게 보여요. 그러고 있다가 이제 점점 물도 조금씩 차고, 그래서 막 캐리어 같은 거 밟고 있었단 말이에요. 근데 그리고 갑자기 끝에서 막 물이 들어오는 소리도 들려요. 그러다가 넓은 방이 있어서 이렇게 캐비넷으로 이렇게 칸칸이 돼 있던 거거든요. 저기 끝에서 비명 소리가 들리면서 캐비넷이 다 무너지는 거예요. 저희 칸에선 캐비넷이 무너지는 바람이 나올 수 있었던 거예요. 원래 같은 복도를 걸어서 나와야 되는데 기울었으니까 저희는 그 벽을 밟고 나온 거죠. 나왔는데 그 앞에서 애들이 이렇게 서 있었어요. 근데 나오라고 하는 거예요. 저희 보고 이렇게 그 밖으로 뛰어내리라고, 바다로. 누가 들어와서 구조해주는 것도 아니고. 근데 한 발자국만 걸어서 그냥 뛰는 것도 아니고 걸어서 나가면 바다였어요. 근데 겁이 나니까 다 서 있다가 갑자기 물이 한번 싹 들어왔던 적이 있어요. 저는 버텼는데 아마 그때 많이 이렇게 휩쓸려서 갔던 것 같아요, 친구들이. 근데 그땐 진짜 나가야겠다는 생각 들어가지고 그냥 그 사람들이 이렇게 건져주고, 그래서 저는 그렇게 나왔어요. 네. 절대 잊을 수 없지 않을까. 네.
Ejin claims the Sewol Ferry tragedy to have been disastrous in many ways.
우선 저희는 구조를 당한 게 아니라 저희는 저희 스스로 탈출한 거고, 탈출을 해서 딱 육지를 밟았을 때 그냥 정신 없었던 것 같아요. 뭐 생각할 겨를도 없었고, 그냥 거기서 다 같이 어떤 주민분 집에 들어가가지고 그냥 계속 뉴스 보고 있고, 전원 구조라고 뜬 거예요. 순간 저희도 다행이다 이 생각을 했는데, 진도체육관으로 갈 때 또 배를 타고 가긴 했거든요. 근데 거기서 TV를 봤을 때 점점 이렇게 실종자 수가 너무 많이 느는 거예요. 그래서 그때 좀 너무 이상하다 이런 생각 들었던 것 같아요.
As if the tragedy itself was not overwhelming enough, Ejin was bombarded with reporters and camera flashes.
그때도 너무 정신없었고 좀 무리하다고 생각 들었어요. 너무. 그때 우리가 아직 학생이고 아직 미성년자인데 그런 참사를 겪고 나왔는데 막 다 카메라 셔터 막 하고, 버스에서 내려서 체육관 들어가려는데 그때 엄마 아빠가 저를 보고 앉는데 그 장면을 너무 찍는 거였는데, 당연히 기자들은 그런 거를 찍어야 사람들이 많이 보고 그런 건 알지만, 그래서 저희는 엄마랑 이렇게 안을 겨를도 없이 진도체육관 안으로 들어갔었거든요.
This situation is so truly sad. My heart is like breaking every time I see or watch anything about this story. I just wanted to share this video with you guys today for those who are unaware of this tragic tale. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this video and subscribe for more.